quick update video with perfecting the generator boards. We have it to the point the negative resistance is nearly so finely tuned we can get a decent output for virtually no input. This is our amp meter here. What we have occurring is we just have the ringer circuit being powered up, passing through the amp meter, the DC end, negative end of the DC that feeds the ringer circuit before the switching occurs, passes through the amp meter. There's no pulsing going through the amp meter. This is just the negative DC input passing through the amp meter, powering up the ringer before the switching. It's a real simple super joule ringer circuit. Our amp meter is literally just installed, reading the DC power flow going into the ringer to create the oscillations, the negative resistant oscillations. We nearly perfected it with a cold cathode spark gap discharge tube that is very similar to a neon bulb. The one difference being there's a cold cathode material in there. The metal is made out of a cold cathode material instead of a traditional neon bulb. That's the exception. Added a potentiometer here for fine tuning of the cold cathode that's similar to a neon. I can tune this very carefully now. The boards are nearly perfected, almost ready to go out. And as you see, the dimmer the bulb gets, the more power we draw, because that's the negative resistance taking effect. The brighter the bulb gets, the less power we draw. Now I will demonstrate and show you the negative resistance effect in full force. Here's an amp meter connected to this is all the wireless output that's been combined. So we earth grounded the center of our wireless coils. We combined all their DC. We have a proper smoothing capacitor here. And now what will occur is we will have an output, a very decent output for virtually no input. So that is the output. And it's rapid. I will leave this dead shorted. That is our output. We have an output of over 0.5 amp for battery charging, while our input goes to virtually nothing. That is our input of the system. That is our output. I'm going to try and move this closer here so you can see it. Got the 2 meters side by side. So the left meter is the input power to the system. The right meter is the output. I will switch the ringer off. You will see everything drops. On. Our input is absolutely, undeniably higher than the output. There can be no doubt. How are we able to get that much current with virtually no input? The answer is through negative resistance and other forms of nonlinear phenomenon occurring within the earth-grounded wireless circuitry, combined with our negative resistor and our cold cathode spark gap discharge tube. And when this effect occurs, it's important to note we still have small amounts of wireless power present in the system that can be tapped into without degrading the source whatsoever. And if you doubt this system is what's producing that wireless power, it's off now. The wireless power is dead. I'll turn it on and the wireless power will come back. So that easily shows it. And again, the input is on the left, the output is on the right. It's important to note when I remove the dead short, the neon bulb comes back on. And again, that's our power. As you see that, when I short that, look at that. My input drops as my output increases. That is the negative resistance phenomenon. So I have been working to perfect these generator boards, fine-tune the charging process. You can clearly see the output is rapid. The spark doesn't quite look like a traditional spark. I'll zoom in on the characteristics of the spark. I don't know if the camera can capture it, but it's almost like a pure white with a slight purple tinted spark. Usually an AC spark is kind of erratic. A DC spark almost has a green tint to it, but this spark almost has a pure white appearance to it. I'm just making that observation of how the spark looks. And I chose to use this method now of because the power harvesting is so much greater when we earth ground the center of those wireless receiver coils. I then now chose to charge up a separate Lifey PO4 battery supercapacitor hybrid 5 amp hour. And what you do now is you can then turn the system on. This thing is at a full charge from this system, so we're able to recharge this guy at virtually no power input due to the negative resistance, and we can do what we want with that power. We can then plug our DC power supply into. You can make the system self-looped for very high efficiency. I'll then take this DC power supply, plug it into the system. If I can make the connection without knocking anything down. So our DC power supply will run a LED bulb and will recharge everything. So again, best way to recharge this is through an inverter with a switch. You have a manual switch to avoid detuning of so as you see, we're consuming real power now, running a bulb, and we are also recharging our source. And this wire goes back to from the system. So our source is acting just as a trigger. We can very rapidly recharge it. As you see, our wattage draw will drop rapidly. This is also a very inefficient DC power supply. As you see, we're consuming 32 watts, but we're wasting 52 or 50 watts. So there's about a 10 to 15 watt waste on just that DC power supply to power it up. Here's that amp meter. So I'm taking notes and observing the effects of the system. Generator board's nearly ready to ship out. Correct way to use it is use all that wireless output that's grounded here to recharge batteries or super caps or battery hybrids, whatever you want. You use that output to recharge these devices, and you then put a little bit of that power back into the source, because it's just a trigger, the source, and it would take very little to recharge the trigger. As you see, our power draw is dropping, and I have much more efficient DC power supplies on the way for that application of recharging the source. And again, here's our input, virtually nothing due to that negative resistance phenomenon. Wireless power is exceptional. And the boards are nearly ready to be cleaned up, built, and shipped out. So I figured I'd show that. Power draw is dropping. Not sure why that LED is slightly flickering. There's our output. It's definitely not a power output issue, as for we can run incandescents here as well. think the LED is just kind of spazzing out. So that's an incandescent 40 watt, no problem. While we're also recharging our source with virtually no input. And the moment I were to shut this inverter off with the manual switch, this supercapacitor battery hybrid that's doing all this would rapidly recharge from the negative resistant wireless output of the system. So I hope that explains it. And I was going to go with the method of just plugging in and recharging the source supercap battery hybrid, but I found that method extremely challenging, very difficult to tune, hard to reproduce. I have that exact circuit that did that in my ringer generator board video right here. I replicated the circuit exactly, and sometimes it behaves a little different. I think it's maybe due to the characteristics of the tubes, but nonetheless, the much more guaranteed odds of success, or your much more guaranteed success rate, is to use all this wireless power that you accumulate, that's earth grounded, to recharge a separate DC source that you then put a little bit of that power back into to recharge the trigger, which is this, and you're good to go. And the reason we can't connect that output back to the input is because of the earth ground connection. It would short out. If I were to connect this DC output back to my source, it would form a short circuit within the ringer circuitry, and the negative resistance effect would be gone, and try and draw as much power as possible. So you could probably still send it back to the source if you had pure DC isolation, maybe through a galvanic method, but that's complicated and expensive. Who knows what the future will hold for updates, but this method seems to be much more simple. And anyway, that's what we're outputting. I will hook my meter up to this. So I wait till this thing starts drawing about 5 watts, then I shut it off. Now I'll hook my multimeter up. Find you a good spot to put it. Actually, you know what? I have a other meter, I believe, with clips on it, so I can just clip right to it and show you. So I'll clip this meter to my 5 amp hour Lifey P04 battery hybrid, and when I shut the inverter off, I'll show you how the system rapidly recharges itself from our negative resistant DC input. I'm making good contact here, am I? Yes, there we go. Okay, so that is our voltage under load. Prop this up a little so you can see it. 12.5150. Trying to hold steady, fight the voltage drop with our input. So again, to sum the system up, this acts as our trigger. This trigger powers up our negative resistant super joule ringer circuit that has our carbon film resistor that you need to create negative resistance in tandem with the cold cathode negative resistant spark gap discharge tube. We then enhance the system further by earth grounding the wireless output, the center tap of the wireless output, for even more nonlinear effects. The gain in power is coming from the earth. The extra wireless power present in the system at virtually no power input is just phenomenal. I'm explaining to you the physics behind how it works, the theory, and once that hits maybe 10 watts on power consumption, I'll shut it off and we'll watch the rapid recharge effect take over. So this is how you recharge your source. The boards will also come with a mini solar panel to recharge your trigger source in case for whatever reason it runs down too low and you can't start the system. You want redundancy in this type of system. This system is an experimental test platform for researchers to play with. Your output can safely vary from 40 watts to 150. You could, in theory, have the potential to pull 350 watts from the device, but you really don't want to do that. That would be straining it. So here's the power consumption on the halogen light, or the incandescent light, and our DC power supply recharging our trigger, which should be done very soon. And keep in mind that's a very inefficient DC power supply. So again, I hope I explained the system, cleared up any confusion with it, and you can see how the output of the system just is fighting that voltage drain on this source. This is only a 5 amp hour Light-Fee PO4 supercap battery source. Extremely light, flexible, can move. Just added an extra power bar here to plug stuff in new. All AC outputs, of course, pass through a watt meter. Pure sine wave AC inverter. I think what I'm going to do is also add an isolation transformer at the output. So pure sine wave, grounded AC isolation transformer for more efficiency, more boost in power. And we can do some interesting things once we're on the AC side. I kind of want to get into playing with stuff on the AC side of the board for even more resonance enhanced effects. Possibly play with a bit of reactive power, that sort of thing. That's planned for the future, as well as just catching up on the massive amount of orders we have. Having 3 of my friends help out. Gonna have to hire someone just full-time to answer emails. Like, holy shit, I'm not kidding. They're just coming in left and right all day. It's nuts. So that's how it goes. And this is a hyper efficient energy system using negative resistance. Will it last forever and keep recharging itself indefinitely? I'm not sure, but it's hyper efficient, will probably last a lifetime or many lifetimes, and provide the user with the ability to have 40 to 150 watts of excess power to play with for a time, and then it recharges itself through an efficient DC supply, and you just keep repeating that cycle. And again, the utmost efficient way to use that power would be to isolate the output completely, and send it back to the source and run your inverter that way. But I'm having issues with detuning when I connect it back to the source. And the simplest way around that to reproduce the best effects consistently with this system was to just recharge a separate source. So, hope that explains it. That's actually going up. That's interesting. That's probably going up a little bit because we're drawing less power. And once we get into the fine details of the late stage charging of this, it takes a very long time for it to nearly stop drawing power. So I'm just showing you the efficiency of the system. We can follow the wire of this thing if you doubt where it's going. It isn't plugged into my wall in any way. The only external connection to the device is the earth wire. It's just an earth wire that goes to my heater. Should probably remove this old thing. So again, here's how everything looks. The video's going on kind of long. I will shut the DC power supply off now that's recharging our source. It's at full charge. Oh, that's off. We will now watch how rapidly, when I shut this inverter off, how rapidly our negative resistance recharges this thing. So we're recharging this thing quite quick. And again, the interesting thing to note is the output color of the spark is different than anything I've ever seen. Traditional AC sparks, kind of erratic, slight orange or blue color to them. DC sparks, always kind of a green color to them. This spark is almost pure white in appearance, so very interesting. Never seen that type of spark before. This is the charge on the output source that runs the inverter, and we will check our charge on our input. I will hold my meter here. We will check the charge on our input trigger. Our input trigger is at a full charge, 13.44, 43. It'll hold rock steady at the 13.3 to 13.4 range and take a very long time to drain, while our advanced circuitry here, which is just negative resistance, rapidly recharges this guy for you to play with and do whatever you want for a time. So I'm showing you the rapid recharging effect. And 13.2, I believe, is 70% charged. I believe we discharged that to about 50 or 40%. And I've got a charge chart up here for Lifey PO4 batteries. Also applies to the 5 amp hour Lifey PO4 battery supercapacitor hybrid. So once we hit 13.3, we're at 80%. Our source being at 13.4 that we recharged would be at 90%. A little over 90% charged. And here's what we're going to. Be 13.16 any moment. There we are. Figured I'd show you voltages instead of that little battery meter that just shows percentages. So again, to sum the system up, this acts as our trigger to run the negative resistance circuitry. The power output from this passes through an amp meter right here. That negative output feeds our negative resistant super joule ringer 3.0 circuit. We center tap, we earth ground the center tap of all our combined wireless output that we turn to DC. Have a nice big capacitor value here, that's the correct value. Its value is a multiple of the frequency, which was 100 kilohertz. Our negative resistance circuitry here greatly enhances our charging. Here we are, we're at 13.17. So anyway, you get the idea what you can do with it. This video is going on long enough. And you would just again turn the system on. And the reason we have an off switch before going to the inverter is because inverters, when just plugged in, have a parasitic power drain, and we want to avoid that. And I can turn this on again, and you see our source just gets, again, rapidly recharged. And I can get a much more efficient DC supply to do that. Much smaller one, much more efficient. There's our outputs. And again, full charge on the source. So there's no point in just needlessly running that. Shut the inverter off. And we rapidly recharge. And again, I will conclude this video with the very interesting output sparks we have. Gonna try and demonstrate again very clearly. Ooh, something shocked me. Anyway, so that's the input, this is the output. Very interesting spark characteristic, and it's powerful. It's almost pure white in appearance. I've never seen a spark like that. Pure white spark with a purple tint. Try and get you a good view. There's almost like this weird radiant effect that comes outward from the spark too. And I will dead short it. Dead shorted. We are outputting over 1/2 amp with our input at virtually nothing. And again, if you doubt that that isn't doing what I'm saying it's doing, I will shut the ringer off. Our output drops to nothing. So we have output with virtually no input. We're just creating a negative resistant trigger. And again, here's how that spark looks. Very rapidly recharges too. So the power is there coming at us quite quickly. I think to absolutely conclude this video, I will take this extra battery pack and show you what will happen when I hook up to it. I just have to hook my meter up to it. So I will show you how fast this thing will recharge. To show you the charging effect isn't some kind of illusion, this is a much smaller pack where the effects will be more seen. Now I will hook up our negative resistant output, and we will just see how fast it can recharge. And the power is there, it's real. And here's how fast we recharge. And this thing was completely dead for the test. It might even be unrecoverable. It's so dead. And anyway, you get the idea. It recharges quickly, and I've also been testing it on old lead acid batteries. It works, but it's obviously a lot slower. Lead acid, kind of an obsolete battery technology. But anyway, that's that. Gave you a good video update, explained the system. I summed it up, explained the physics behind it. Just have a trigger. This acts as our trigger. Could be much smaller in theory. Passes through our amp meter so we can read the power going through it. Powers up our negative resistant super joule ringer circuit 3.0. The upgrade we made to it is we made it a negative resistant circuit with the correct value carbon film resistor, and of course the cold cathode spark gap discharge tube, very similar to a neon bulb, but it's different being as the metal material in it is a cold cathode metal material. We then don't tap the power directly off this RLC circuit we made. We tap the power wirelessly and resonantly while we're tuned to that negative resistance circuit. And we get more power by earth grounding the center tap of our wireless receivers. And we get a very powerful DC. And that output, when dead shorted, makes our input go to virtually nothing. So that's a very interesting phenomenon people should be interested in. And here's the charge going up on this completely dead battery pack as a test. I believe that was a 48 volt battery pack when fully charged. It was completely dead for this test. So we see it going up. And this might even be unrecoverable, it's so dead. But nonetheless it is charging. So, got this sent to me from one of my friends who used to do a lot of RC stuff. He just sent me all his old dead batteries. I made a pack with it. Never recharged it. They're all virtually dead. But nonetheless, we still have that ability to recharge. And yeah, I hope that sums it up, explains it. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We're at the point where we're growing. We're going to probably have to establish either another building soon or another few rooms in our house to just start really building things. And again, thank you to everyone for your support and research into this. Because electrical research as it stands today is almost non-existent, and it needs to continue. So, again, thank you everybody, and things are certainly very interesting.